You ever wonder how a simple idea, maybe one you'd scribble on a napkin, actually turns into a real successful business? It can seem like some kind of magic, but it turns out there's a map for that journey. So let's break it down and demystify this whole startup thing together.
This is the big question, right? For anyone who's ever had an idea. How do you get from that first little spark to something that people genuinely love and want to use? Well, the answer isn't a straight line. It's really a cycle of building, testing, and most importantly, learning from your customers. Sometimes that means you got to go right back to square one.
Okay, so this hand-drawn flowchart, this is going to be our guide. It lays out the entire path, from all the little feedback loops to the huge critical decisions. And the real power here is just how simple it is. It shows that startup success isn't some lightning in a bottle moment of genius. It's a clear, repeatable process that anyone can follow.
So where does a journey like this even begin? Well, think about any great company you know. Apple, Airbnb, you name it. They all started in the exact same spot, with just a single core concept.
It all kicks off with one thing: the idea. This is the very beginning, the genesis of everything. Maybe it's a solution to a problem you have every day, or just a cool new way to connect people. The key thing to remember at this stage is that it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to exist. This is square one on our map.
But look, an idea is great, but it's not going to build itself. You can't just think your way to a successful company. The next phase is all about action. It's about taking that concept out of your head and seeing if it can survive in the real world. Now, you might think this part is super complicated, but the first few steps are actually pretty straightforward. It's a surprisingly linear path. You start with your idea, you build a really simple prototype, and then you move right into validation. This sequence is absolutely essential. It's the fastest way to figure out if you're onto something. And that prototype stage brings us to a super important term you hear all the time, the MVP, or minimum viable product. This isn't your final shiny product with all the bells and whistles, not even close. The whole goal is to build the absolute simplest, most bare-bones version that actually works, just enough to get it into a customer's hands so you can start learning as fast as possible. So, you've got your MVP, and getting it into someone's hands leads us to maybe the most crucial step of all, validation. And there is only one way to do this right. You have to talk to customers. You can't guess what they want, you can't just assume. You simply have to put the product right in front of them and then just listen. Really, really listen. Okay, so you've built your prototype, you've had those conversations with customers, and now you've arrived at the first huge fork in the road. This is that moment of truth, where all your initial work really gets put to the test. In the end, everything comes down to this one huge question, the one that keeps every founder up at night. After all that hard work, does anyone actually need what you've built? The answer to this changes everything that happens next. There's actually a name for this magic moment. It's called product market fit. It's that sweet spot, that perfect point where you've made something that people genuinely want and need. It's not just a nice to have. It solves a real problem for them. And for any new startup, finding this fit is like the #1 goal. So at this fork in the road, you're going to get one of two answers. It's either a yes, meaning you've hit that sweet spot of product market fit, or it's a no, which just means you're not there yet. And trust me, that word yet is so important because a no is definitely not the end of the line. This right here is such a critical mindset shift. Getting a no feels bad, I get it, but it is not failure. It's the exact opposite, actually. Think of it as an incredible gift. It's pure, unfiltered data that tells you exactly what you need to go and fix. Honestly, that no is where the gold is. It's where the real learning happens. It stops you from wasting months, maybe even years, building something nobody wants. Instead, it's your big chance to pause, listen, adapt, and make it better. And that's exactly why the no path on our map leads right back into the process. It's not a dead end. It actually fires up this awesome engine of improvement, a feedback loop that's designed to get you closer and closer to that yes. So this engine has basically two gears. The first is the iteration loop. This is a small loop. You get feedback, you tweak the prototype a little, and you test it again. Simple. But sometimes you need a much bigger change. That's called a pivot. That's a major shift where you go all the way back to the core idea itself and change it based on what you've learned. Okay, so what happens when you finally navigate all those loops? You iterate, maybe you even pivot, and you finally get that big, resounding yes for product market fit. Well, now you enter the final stage of the process, success.
That yes path, it leads to one simple word we've all been working for: success. This is the goal, right? You've made it through the maze, you actually listened to your customers, and you've built something that the market truly, genuinely wants. But let me leave you with this one last thought. The process on our map ends right here, at success. But think about it. Is any business ever really done? Or is achieving success just the beginning of a whole new, even bigger loop of listening, iterating, and improving? Something to think about.